We think it is a very exciting opportunity to engage with a broad number of people in the field, and we hope to share some very valuable information. My name is Martino Harmon, and I serve as chair of the Melvin C. Terrell Educational Foundation. I also, in my day job, serve as vice president for student life at the University of Michigan, and I'm very proud to have this webinar. And I want to tell you just a little bit about the foundation because many of you may not be familiar with who we are and what we do. So the Dr. Melvin C. Terrell Educational Foundation serves as a beacon for student affairs professionals and really higher ed professionals. And our goal is really to address the issues and the needs of today's college students. We were founded in 2007 under the leadership of Melvin C. Terrell with the support and guidance of Dr. Roosevelt Littleton Jr., who was a former president of NASPA. Just so you know, Dr. Melvin C. Terrell is an emeritus member of the board, so we still appreciate his wisdom and involvement. We were really created with the mission of ensuring underrepresented students gain access to success in higher education and student affairs. We do that through providing scholarships and professional development opportunities for undergraduate and graduate students who plan to pursue careers in higher education. And our funding really goes to a variety of different opportunities in that area. We try to provide access to research publications, position papers, serials, and monographs. We provide financial assistance to student affairs graduate students and undergraduates with grants and aid for scholarly student development research. We are seeking to establish an endowment for future and continued growth of the organization. And we provide professional development and training for undergraduate and graduate student leaders. And finally, we also provide professional development and training for new, mid-level, and senior student affairs professionals. The Retooling webinar is a great example, really, of our goal in providing that type of support for people in the profession. So we're really excited to be here today. As a matter of fact, our founder, Dr. Melvin C. Terrell, is actually on this call. So you can wave, Dr. Terrell, so everybody can see you waving. But before I hand it over to the moderator, I want to express my deep appreciation to a few people. Number one, Brandy Jones. Brandy is a doctoral student in the higher education program here at the University of Michigan. Brandy also serves in a part-time staff role with the foundation and will join the board as an official board member in the coming months. I also want to express my appreciation for Dr. Ainsley Carey. Dr. Carey is a leader, a giant, a pillar in our profession. He has done so much. He's also a scholar, an author, and we're really excited that he is the moderator for this webinar. And finally, I want to thank all of our esteemed panelists who will share their wisdom and their tips for all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carey.
Martino, thank you for getting us off to such a great start. And let me say to everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. As Martino mentioned, my name is Ainsley Carey, and I'm joining you today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Today we have a treat, a distinguished panel of higher education professionals, and they're here to discuss a topic that we will all grapple with at some point of our higher education career. That is retooling and building our transferable skills. Now, consider this. If you're fortunate enough to have a long career in college administration, at points during your career, you've been asked to take on a new role at your current institution, or you've accepted a new position at a different institution in the same state, or you've been recruited for a senior leadership role at a different institution in a different state, or you've decided to leave your current employer for personal and family reasons, or your position has been eliminated for political reasons. All of these transitions require us to adopt and develop different skill sets. That's why we think about retooling and building transferable skills. It's not a once opportunity. It is something that we must remain continuously in development, thinking about how we grow and how we build our skills. Just as importantly, how we build our scholarship to prepare for the next move, because sometimes the next move will happen and you can't always control that. After 30 years in college administration at some great universities throughout the United States and in Canada, I recently stepped down from my role as an executive leader at a university here in Canada to do precisely what we are discussing today, retooling my career and building my skills for an entirely new profession that we face right now. I'm excited that our panel is here today to help us grapple with this exact topic. So, before I have the panel introduce themselves, I want to give you some information about today's session. We will have about 25 minutes of discussion with the panel, and then we want to turn Q&A over to you. Questions, you should submit them via text. And then we will scroll through those questions and try to answer as many questions as possible. So at any time, you could submit a question, but at about 25 after the hour is when we'll dive into those questions. I'm going to ask our two panel members to introduce themselves, and then I'll have the other two introduce themselves. With Dr. Watson and Dr. Marlo McCowan, please introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carey, and glad to be here. Jamal Watson. I am a professor and Associate Dean of Graduate Studies at Trinity Washington University. But I started my career off as a higher education journalist and made the transition to academe, having served for over 2 decades as the editor of Diverse Issues in Higher Education, which is a trade publication covering issues of equity, diversity, access within higher ed. And I'm happy to be here and also happy to be a member of the Melvin C. Terrell board.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jarvis. Uh, I've served in higher education, student affairs, multicultural student development for a little over a decade at various institution types, 2-year community college, selective, Ivy, etc., and currently serve as a community development manager with Corning Incorporated. Corning Incorporated is an art material science, but I lead our educational equity work stream along with our community impact, community development experiences. Haven't left the field of higher ed or student affairs. I maintain my research agenda, where I remain active as a scholar who studies the experiences of rural students, particularly rural Black men in higher education. And I'm a new board member, so I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Dr. Gilliam and then Dr. Atkins.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Erin Gilliam. I currently serve as the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Student Progression at the Albany State University in Albany, Georgia, the largest HBCU in Georgia. I have to say that my route was probably a little bit different from my panelists, as I have a PhD in African American history, taught as junior faculty, tenured chairperson, dean, and then got into I want to be in the student-centered focus. I put myself in the student success realm, which to me is the bridge of which brings academic affairs and student affairs together for the holistic student experience. I look forward to speaking to you all. Thank you.
And good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Will Atkins. I currently serve as the Vice Provost for Campus Life and Dean of Students at Ursinus College in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. So if there are any Birds fans, go Birds. But my entire career has been really centered in doing student affairs work at various institution types. So most recently, I was at the University of Pennsylvania, also been at the University of Florida, Miami University in Ohio, as well as the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So similarly worked at various institution types and sizes, from your large flagships to Ivy League to small private liberal arts. So with that, I found myself even doing a lot of retooling and adapting and really crafting my own professional narrative in different spaces to show adaptability and flexibility in whichever environment I'm in. So really excited to be able to speak with folks and also really proud to be a member of the board.
Well, let me thank my distinguished panel for joining today. Let me begin by asking the first question, and any panel member may explore this. Today's discussion is largely about executive transitions. How do we make that transition, and what are some of the things that we should be thinking about? Most importantly, are the skills that we need to develop to move forward in our career. As you think about those transferable and sustainable skills, what comes to mind for the panel as you think about skills needed for successful transitions?
A- Absolutely. I'll take that. To me, a willingness to learn, um, critical thinking. Like I said, I'm a historian by trade, and I've had the opportunity to work at small HBCUs, public HBCUs, large, private. And one thing that I can always say that sets me apart is that I do have a willingness to learn. I want to learn, and I'm student focused, whether I'm a professor, whether I'm vice provost, whether I'm associate provost, whether I'm dean. My first thing is to interact with our students. And I think that is one of the most transferable skills is our student interaction and being student centered and student focused, no matter your role at your institutions.
I
Dr.
think,
Watson. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Watson.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly add, and I agree. I think one of the things that individuals have to be able to do is to tell their story, right? And to be able to translate their story into this larger framework. So one of the things that is very interesting to me is how academics in particular are super focused on their research, but oftentimes cannot necessarily translate that to the larger public, right? So they're talking to five or six people, who are in their own circles, and so the ability to be able to tell that story, I think both personally and also professionally helps the field, right? Because it allows you to be a part of discussions that otherwise you might not have been part of. It drives me absolutely crazy when I watch CNN or MS Now and Fox, and I hear people who are experts on TV talking about stuff, and I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. They've never done this research. They've never been in these circles, but yet they're the experts. And from a journalistic point of view, what I would love is for individuals who are working within student affairs and academic affairs to find ways to broaden their research as scholar practitioners to be out in front educating the public and helping them to understand our field.
Mhm. Dr. Marlon McCowan, I'm going to go to you to build off Dr. Watson's comment about building your scholarship because you remain active in your scholarship right now. How important is that? And then we'll go to you, Dr. Atkins.
Yeah, one thing that Dr. Watson shared that really resonated with me in this question about maintaining that active research agenda. When I was in my defense 3 years ago, one of my committee members invited me to think about how my research would be accessible, primarily to my main audience, which are rural Black males. No one was
Mhm.
going to read my 200-page dissertation. My four committee members and myself, maybe my spouse, but that's pretty much it. So she invited me to think about what is this current generation tapped into? What will help them understand my findings? So decided to really develop a hybrid novel that's a graphic novel, comic
Mhm.
book that'll get to my hope to students. But one thing to answer the question more directly, accessibility, having to always think about who your primary audience is and what are their needs and what is the best method of choice to really get to their strengths, their understanding, so that you can meet them where they are to get them where they need to be. So that's how I've been able to kind of maintain the research agenda, but also maintaining relationships. One of the things that I think to circle back to the first question theme, wherever we go, our next steps, we must maintain our relationships, never burn bridges, because all of the people that I've worked with in the past at other institutions have been partners that I've written with, that I've published with, that I've presented at conferences with. So that's also just another, I think, asset and connection to the question.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins, what would you like to add to this?
Absolutely. I want to lift up what my colleagues shared, also specifically with what Dr. Gillian mentioned around that willingness to learn and being able to take in new information as you receive it and adapt and pivot your skill set based on that new information. So I absolutely feel that those are some of the transferable, sustainable skills. I also, in my learning, I listen to a lot of podcasts, read audiobooks, read different articles that are out there on LinkedIn or what mentors share. And I heard this saying around shifting this language from what many might consider soft skills to actually be more power skills. Emotional intelligence, especially in the age of AI, human intelligence. And when folks ask me about, what are some of those transferable skills, one that I always talk about is temperament. And it's being able to remain grounded, remain steady, especially when you get the curveballs and the unexpected, situations that land on your desk. Remaining grounded and steady and tempered is really a key transferable skill that will serve you well in whatever environment you're in. I also think finding a nice balance of confidence with humility is always something that is welcomed in workspaces, being able to be a good collaborator. I do find that those are some of the transferable skills that have helped, especially in the retooling of a professional skill set.
Thank you for those responses. I want to remind our guests today that you can submit questions via chat. So please, you can do it at any time during the discussion and we'll bring them all together towards the ending. Let me go to our second question. And this second question is about professional relevance. I remember when I first became a student affairs professional, relevance was your brand. How do you build your brand through conferences and workshops and seminars, letting people know who you are so that when employment opportunities come available, you come to mind. But it's an entirely different world with social media and different activities. How do we think about the current generation of remaining professionally relevant as you prepare for a transition or you're thinking about, or you're in the middle of a transition? What does professional relevance mean now in the kind of new social media world? Dr. Watson, I wouldn't mind you starting us off in that conversation.
Yeah, so I would say that the first thing folks have to do is read and read deeply
Mhm.
and to understand what is happening around them. It is amazing how um, even among academics, there's not a lot of sometimes engagement or reading beyond their particular field. I think
Mhm.
the other thing is, and this kind of dovetail on what we were just talking about in terms of skills, I think it's important to be nice to folks, right? I mean, and again, I think sometimes that's often absent in some of our spaces where there's this cutthroat, competitive nature, who's got a bigger office, who's got a bigger title. I think being nice is really important and trying to find ways to open doors for other people, right? So I'm looking on this. I've never met Dr. Knox in person, but I know Dr. Knox because I was publishing his op-eds that he was writing for diverse issues in higher education many
Mhm.
years ago, right? So I never met him. Like we've never met in person before, but I know him and I know the kind of work that he's done. So we've got to find ways to build those connections with each other so that when we think about, okay, here's a topic or issue, I call up Dr. Harmon and say, can you write something? Or can we do something together and do more collaboration? I just worry that sometimes there is this competitive nature that overtakes our ability to do more collaboration. So if we stay
Yeah.
open to the ability to communicate and collaborate, I think we'll all go far and we'll lift each other up as we go along.
Dr. Gilliam, would you mind adding to this topic?
Absolutely. My colleague, Dr. Watson, said something that I love. Read.
Mhm.
Reading, not to sound cliche, is reading is fundamental. I started off in this work almost 20 years ago, writing about HBCUs in the Black church. And now today I'm working on an article about workforce development and retention at historically Black colleges. So it's also about reflecting and reading. And reflecting society. Number one, we're all scholars on this call, we're all educators. And the number one thing that we are supposed to do is to be able to communicate about societal needs, about what's going on in society. And the way that that comes, the church by hearing, by reading. And
Mhm.
so that is something that I do. I could do more of. Will said something, listening to podcasts. I'm more of a reader, but there is something that I'm putting in my list of things to do is listening to more podcasts. But I want to hear what my colleagues have to say. Collaboration is part of the journey. No one got here on their own. So we have to continue to work together, collaborate. And we know how that works in the scholarship realm. Hey, man, I wrote an article. I'm gonna put you on second author. What's your thought? Give give me
Mhm.
a give me a paragraph or two, and that
Yeah.
keeps you relevant in the field, and it keeps your name out there, and it keeps you open to mentors and coaches and sponsorship, and all those type of things in navigating higher education.
Thank you, Dr. Watson and Dr. Gilliam. I think this question has been thoroughly covered. If there are other questions, let's bring that forward. I would like to move to Dr. Marlo McCowan and Dr. Atkins on this next question. How do we identify gaps? How do you help individuals think about what are the gaps in my skill set that I need to prepare for a transition coming up? And how do I identify them? What clues or tips or ideas might you give our audience about identifying gaps in their skill sets? Dr. Watkins, Dr. Marlon McCown, please go ahead.
I was gonna say, Dr. Atkins, you can go ahead.
Sure, sure. And I think my response is also connected to the previous question. I often think about, identifying gaps in the skill set and what strategies I use to address them. I think about ways that I can continue to be what I'll give credit to a mentor of mine who's the current vice chancellor at University of Colorado Boulder. She's also our vice chair for the board, Dr. Deandra Moll. When we were both working at the University of Florida, we crafted language around building specialized generalists across our Division of Student Affairs. So being a specialized generalist really connects with looking at your current skill set, identifying other functional areas or other parts of the work that really impact the student experience that you may not have familiarity with or experience with, but learning how to become a utility player and learning how other functional areas work, even at a high level. So I think for me, it is considering everything as an opportunity to learn, even in areas where I feel very comfortable or very confident or very situated in. Let's say I'm working in residence life, or I'm working in diversity affairs. Like I know that work inside and out. And at the same time, what was discussed, what's being discussed today or being looked at and researched today is very different from last year and 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So in many ways, even in our comfort, there's still room to grow, opportunities to build our skill set. So some of the strategies, used to address them, reading current articles and reading current publications that really focus on issues that are impacting today's college student, going to NASPA and ACPA and learning about certain trends that are impacting the student experience. And then also thinking about areas that you are maybe unfamiliar with, or if you're looking at potential job opportunities or future opportunities, and in the job description, if there are requirements or expectations that you're like, oh, I'm not super strong in that area, that's certainly a way that you can build or identify skills to grow and build and really lean into that. So for me, continuing to think about being a specialized generalist, being a utility player, being someone who can learn in whatever environment you're in and take that information is really important.
Yeah, for me, I was leading an equity audit a couple of years ago, and the process entailed reviewing a lot of student outcome, student success data, and leading a team of people to identify gaps and strategies. And I'm a Strengths Quest guy all the way. I lead with all of my strengths, my top five, and they're all in the relationship building cluster. I say that to say because a part of the theory of Strengths Finder is that you continue to work at your strengths and not necessarily work on your lower end of your top 20 or 25. But something wasn't clicking with the committee, right? Like we had all of the data in front of us that showed all of the inequities that some students were facing and others weren't. And because I was always 10 steps ahead of the committee, just knowing where the data was leading us to, I felt like, my team should have had the answers already. And so I tapped into my network, my friends, my colleagues, and took some advice. I worked with my executive coach, and my executive coach, she helped me understand that I needed to refine and better understand perspective bias and how when I'm working with other people, I am looking at the data constantly. Other people are doing other roles and they might not have access to all of the information that I have. So I needed to just take a step back and do a more holistic perspective of the team and the data and what we had at hand. But the strategy that was key was I asked for help. I think a lot of times we as leaders may feel that, we're the one in this positional authority or have some power, and we may feel that maybe we shouldn't ask for help, don't need to ask for help, or if we ask for help, maybe that sends a signal to other people in our sphere that maybe they're not so confident. But one of the key things that will help, that seems so elementary, but it's important for us to be help seekers. And at the same
Mhm.
time, when we have other people in our on our teams that we're supporting and supervising, don't wait for that performance review. Don't wait for that end of the year evaluation because it's not fair to that person. That development should be ongoing. And when we see gaps, when we see opportunities, just address them immediately. But it takes something that we've all shared in the first two questions, and that's values. One of my values is ongoing learning, lifelong learning. So it's important for us to adopt those kind of strategies of help seeking, committing to a life of learning. And in return, you just will become just a much better personal and professional colleague to all of the folks that are in your network.
Thank you. I'd like to transition us to uh, questions submitted by the audience. And this first question, the rubber hits the road on this one. So I'm so grateful to Ashley for bringing this question to the table because this is what this whole session is about at the end of the day. My institution is closing at the end of the semester, and my current role as the VPSA I am struggling to get interviews, and I believe it is because I'm still a sitting VP at a small school. What recommendations do you have that can help me at least get into the interview process? This is the key question of our moment. As higher ed is making this critical transition, we're transitioning out, many institutions are transitioning out those who have helped build these institutions. So let's dive into this and start having some real talk about this topic. Dr. Gilliam, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off with starting a response here.
Absolutely. I was hoping you would come to me just because I am 62 days in at Albany State University as the vice provost. And I also came from a very small HBCU. And I thought like, hey, I'm not getting interviews because I'm coming from even though I was executive level, but I'm coming from a very small HBCU. Um, and it was a struggle. But one thing that, and I know that some people, my colleagues will disagree, I'm very extremely bold. I'm going to, if I see the job posting, I'm going to email the president, the director of I'm going to, number one, I'm going to complete the application. But if it's something that I want and I believe that I would be a good fit for, and I'm at peace with living there and applying for it, I'm going to make sure that my name is heard in those places. So if that means that I have to send a direct email or I make sure that at the SAC COC conference, I'm running into that sitting provost, I'm going to make sure that's very intentional. Um, and I know that I have a colleague on this, or he's not on this call, but he's on the board with me. And he's like, Aaron, you cannot go out emailing presidents. That's not the process. And I hear what you're saying, and I get it's not the process. But for me, because of that, I have been interviewed at least 3 times because of my boldness.
Thank you, Aaron. Other thoughts, comments on this question? Jamal.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think Dr. Gilliam points to a really important point, which is that there is no one way to get out in front of this very crisis that I think we're experiencing. So just two things I would add. One, and I know we're going to talk about maybe professional associations in a second, but I think it's really important to be connected to associations and the leadership of those associations who can sometimes help to make inroads and connections that are very, very important. And of course, many of us know, like, ACE fellows and some of the programs that are offered within traditional higher ed. But I would say let's not overlook, like, some of the organizations like the Higher Education Leadership Foundation, Health, which is specifically focused on HBCUs and leadership there. Um, that's formed by current presidents who can oftentimes, make recommendations and suggestions, or who know what's coming down the line in, 2 months of retirement that is likely to take place. So I think it's really important for us to stay connected. And then a final thing I would just add is it's important for us to think about reading, the Chronicle of Higher Ed, Inside Higher Ed, some of these publications that are out there to understand what the trend is and where things are moving. Because again, it's really important to look at best practices and hear the stories and read the stories of other people who have been through similar experiences.
Mhm, mhm. Any other panel members want to add to this question or this response?
Just really quick, having served at smaller colleges and universities, one of the things that a VP told me when I decided to simply relocate, you're at a small college, so use that to your advantage because you wear so many hats. So when you're articulating your experiences, writing your cover letter, I'm not just an assistant dean or a dean of students. I'm a senior executive overseeing multiple different functional areas. So I think that
Mhm.
could be one that could land with other institutions if it's something that you're not already articulating your experiences as.
Yeah, Dr. Marlo McCown, I want to add to this. I've been reflecting quite a bit on the executive transitions of those who are making these leadership transitions. And I have a chance to review resumes and give people feedback in their resumes. And one of the things that I see consistently in resumes is folks are applying for executive leadership positions, VP positions, AVP positions, and higher. They're speaking with a program coordinator's voice. So they are talking about the student that came to their office. They're talking about the program or event that they're hosted. They talk about a dinner that they serve with 10 students. They're not talking about executive leadership discussions. And that's the voice that we have to transition to as we prepare for these executive leadership positions. So I would encourage anyone, if you want to bounce your resume off of me, and I'll ask Brandy to put it into the chat. If you'd like to bounce your resume off me, I'd be glad to just run through it and help you turn your voice from a program coordinator voice or a departmental director voice to an executive in transition. That's going to be key. And we don't know why a search committee pulls us forward or not. We can't make any assumptions. Sometimes it's fit. Sometimes they already have an internal candidate that they want. Sometimes they're looking for a different diversity value. So let's just apply. To Aaron's point, make the call, send the email, and apply. And we can't take it personal when we don't get these gigs because sometimes there are 100 plus applicants, and they just pick the top 5 or 10 and move forward, and you may not be in that pool. But I want to help you move your voice from a program coordinator to an executive. To Dr. Marlo McCowan's point, there are ways to transition that. Let me allow one more comment on this, and then I see a couple questions are coming in.
Sure. I just wanted
Oh,
oh,
go
sure.
ahead.
I wanted to briefly add to what my colleagues also shared. Thinking about working I currently work at a small private liberal arts institution, and many colleges and universities across the country, even some of our more resource-rich and elite institutions, are having to operate in a more lean budget fiscal reality, right? With enrollment shifting, with impacts coming from all areas of the socio-political environment that we're in. Many institutions are having to pivot and having to adjust. What I've appreciated about my experience at a small school is as mentioned before, being more involved at a level where I can communicate how in an environment where we are resource lean, where we are looking at ways that we have to pivot, we're still activating, we're still executing, we're still delivering for our students. We're still in alignment with the mission and the values of the institution. And so in many ways, I find that that's been, or that can be a strength to be able to say that in this resource lean environment, here are the ways that we've still been able to activate, to deliver, and to serve the mission of the institution and our students. So I found that to be a strength in ways that, coming from other institutions where there were more resources, there may not be as much depth or the ability to be creative in those environments. So I'd say creativity and being able to communicate that creativity is critical.
Mhm. Thank you. Let me toss out this question. Sometimes as we prepare for this transition, we are wide open to go anywhere, right? You might say, hey, I'll live in any part of the US, maybe I'll go abroad. Well, with the exception of these three states, of course, but we all have our, our barriers, our limitations. But as you begin that executive transition, how do you, panel members, evaluate what are your values that you are calculating as you consider an executive move? You have family, their kids, their schools, their parents, there's property. What are the top two or three values that go into your calculus as you consider applying for positions? Those who have, some limits on where they will work and what they will do and what they will give up to take the next role. Anyone, please jump in.
Well, I was just going to add that this is a really, I think, big issue that I think a lot of individuals, particularly faculty and administrators of color, struggle with sometimes. I remember writing a story about
Mm.
faculty member who was at one university and was telling me that he had to drive 2 hours to get his hair cut, just because there was nowhere around and there was no barbershops around. Those are real issues that impact one's day-to-day life, right? In terms of whether, I mean, it may be a great job, but it was just like 2 hours back and forth to get a haircut. One faculty member told me that, they couldn't find a church that they felt comfortable with. So those were real personal things, or a good school that their kids felt comfortable with. So again, I think, what we've learned from all of the research is that, again, as students need belonging, right? Faculty also need to feel like they belong not only at an institution, but also within the community. So I think those are very real issues, the family piece and just the personal stuff, which often is treated as an afterthought when I think is central to these kinds of moves.
Yeah, when I was, I'll keep it brief. When I was making transitions early in my career, I was certainly reflecting on institutional values. And did they match my personal values of how I lead and live my life? So that was something that was key. And during the interview, I made sure to interview them, make sure that they actually did live their values, because if there was a mismatch, then it was going to be a mismatch for me, and it was just going to be just not a good blending of my skills with the institution. And then I echo everything that was shared in terms of the things that you need to just exist and be. Make sure that you have those, and that you also remain connected to the people that were at the previous institution and or community, because they're going to help you with that immediate, those first 30 to 90 days of transition, because you're going to need those people to help with the growing pains of the newness of what it means to just try to thrive personally and professionally.
Yeah. I have a good question that I'd like to submit to the group. I think we may be coming towards the end of our time, but I want to have this question reflected. I'm feeling overwhelmed since the DEI rollbacks. I've taken on additional work and I have very limited time and capacity to prepare for my next move. For the panelists, if you only have 2 hours a week for career and professional development, how would you spend it? This is kind of how would you prioritize your time if it was limited and you really needed to make that move? What are your thoughts? Dr. Atkins, would you start us off?
Sure. And it's an excellent question. I'm thinking through identifying maybe where your priorities are and being able to budget that time strategically and effectively. And so maybe for this week, you plan, I'm going to spend these 2 hours focused on resume critique, resume building, talking to folks, having it reviewed. The next, time you have a couple hours, now I'm going to focus on the cover letter. I'm going to focus on maybe crafting my narrative and continuing to build that. So every week you're building on from one thing to the next to the next. Also taking some time and being intentional. Maybe it's if you can only schedule 15 to 20 minutes a day to look for new opportunities and build that time in first thing in the morning or before, right when you get home after work. Scheduling and being able to be adaptable based on your needs is for me probably the best thing to do for right now. But just continuing to take forward movement, like whatever forward movement you can generate, that is progress, and that's really important. So I'd say if your time is limited, also finding time to seek guidance and wisdom from mentors, seek guidance and wisdom from former supervisors who can also offer some perspective. All those pieces are one piece of a puzzle. Allow those to come together to be able to serve you in the best way possible. So I'd say just kind of continuing to build on each moment you have with one part of your professional skills, one of your professional tools that you need to be able to build on.
Dr. Marlo McCown, were you about to add to this? If you have 2 hours a week, where would you invest it in your professional development?
Yeah, and this is where one of my there's things that works for me is mentors. So I just map out some time to connect with previous supervisors and mentors, but also have a mentor who is in a position that I would like to ascend to one day. So I save time by trying to research things that I should be reading, uh, listening to different executive level podcasts around my career. Again, just reaching out and having those meaningful conversations with mentors because they've been there, they've done it, and they can share some of the hidden curriculum, the things that you may not get from a student affairs leadership book that talks about career transitions and career change, right? So for me, it's been those phone calls on my commute home. It's been the back and forth text messages. It's been catching up on a walk with my dog. It's finding time in my life where I'm already alone and in a quiet space to also be able to do something else. So again, the drives, the walks, the commutes, to have time to connect with mentors. But those are the strategies for me. And I see so there's a great student affairs podcast. It's called Student Affairs Now. It's I can't remember which organization it's through. I believe ACPA, but do not quote me on it. But Student Affairs Now has a range of folks that come and discuss different relevant topics in higher education and student affairs, everything from your mid-level to your senior level. Some of it's academic research, others it's more functional areas like leading during tumultuous times, right? Like that, and they're all archived. Student Affairs Now, about 45 to 60-minute episodes. It's via podcast. If you like the live version, you can watch it on YouTube. But that's my go-to. AERA has a really great one. I don't remember the name, but it's by Royale Johnson, at a scholar at University of Southern California. Their podcast is also really good, but more aligned with more academia research. But Student Affairs Now is your more functional role, Student Affairs traditional podcast.
Mhm. Any other responses to that? I would also add, if you only have 2 hours and you're operating with some urgency, meaning your institution closes in the next 60 to 90 days, you're in a transition period and you have only 30 to 90 days left in your role. One of the things to spend 2 hours a week on is perhaps fine tuning and aligning your resume with the career opportunities that you're interested in. I mean, fine tooth comb. Many of us do our resumes once every 2 or 3 years, maybe every 5 years when we're applying for a new position. But if my time is limited, what I would encourage or what I would do is really go through this resume line by line, sentence by sentence, action word by action word, past tense by past tense. There are lots of writing tools today that you can use, whether it be Chat GPT or Grammarly, and go through and evaluate your resume and look at positions and say, am I aligned with what they're asking for today in the job market? So the alignment between your resume, your executive voice, and the opportunities that exist in the market are critically important. And if my time is limited, that's where I would spend it. And I want to go back to something that Dr. Gilliam said at the beginning. Don't afraid to be bold. There's no harm in a president saying, I'm going to forward your email to my executive assistant and he or she will decide what to do with it. Or I'll forward your email to the search committee. There's no harm in that. Nothing happened to you. So think about how you reach out, but also make sure that what you're putting forward is the top-notch resume cover letter and it is aligned with the position description. It's not generic. It is aligned. And that's what executive roles require and demand today. Okay, there's some good podcast recommendations that are showing up in the chat. I will move to another question. One of the questions that was submitted earlier was, how do you center wellness when navigating these career transitions? So these are stressful times, and many of us feel under attack at your institution. How do you put your wellness at the center of this as you think about transitions, because this has an impact on your family, your kids, your parents, everyone in your circle may be impacted by you thinking about a career transition right now. How do you center your wellness? Thoughts? Dr. Atkins, I know you and I, oh, Dr. Gilliam, please.
I began to laugh because my friends and I, who are aligned in the same role, executive leadership, they know I do not play about bedtime. Of course, there are seasons, commencement, academic appeal seasons. There are ebbs and flows in education, but I do not play about bedtime. They'll call and they say, I know it's 9:15 and you already, and I am already prepared for bed, and I'm very protective. I am a mom, I'm a wife, but I'm very protective of my bedtime, because if I'm not rested, I can't make the decisions that's going to impact the student. I'm going to have their mom and their mama's mom trying to cuss me out because their baby couldn't walk, and because I made a decision because I have not gotten sleep. And I know that that's one of my weak spots, that if I don't have sleep, that I don't work as up to my full potential. I mean, we all know that we've had to be there. We've had to write a accreditation report or have something due in the middle of the night, and we've all had to have those long nights. But if I don't have to have them, I plan my life. Yeah, I'm coming to the students' cram jam. I'm gonna stop in, but I'm leaving by 8:45 so that I can be in bed by 10. But that's protecting my bedtime space. And I say
Yeah.
that I missed nap time in kindergarten. If we could go back, I would take it.
I got it. That's a good one. It is part of a wellness function, making sure that you get adequate sleep. Also, what else is out there with regard to thinking about your wellness? Dr. Atkins?
Sure. I love the nap time, especially on the weekend. So I'm right there with you. For me, I've learned over time to identify my non-negotiables and prioritize it and protect it at all costs. Part of it is no one knows what you're going through but you. Folks show up with a lot happening, of course, at work, but also outside of work. Folks are managing and juggling multiple, responsibilities, grief or stress or, other things going on. And something I've learned and read and listened to as well is that, especially for Black men, one of the first triggers or indicators for our health issues is stress. And so for me, I'm focused on making sure that I'm not letting this job or people stress me out to the best of my ability. So for me, my non-negotiables, it's therapy. I go see my therapist. It's acupuncture. If y'all haven't tried acupuncture, give it a shot. Happy to talk about it. Big fan. I stay active, making sure that I'm moving my body. I'm drinking water. I'm getting rest. I'm listening to my body. Like that to me is really important. If my body is fatigued and I'm tired, I have to listen to it because it will make me shut down one way or the other. So I really make sure I prioritize my wellness. And then also I remember and I prioritize what brings me joy. My family brings me joy. Good music, vinyl records, concerts, like those are good food. Like I love being in Philly. It's a great food town. So I also think about what brings you joy and making sure that you prioritize your joy outside of work. Those are some non-negotiables.
Mhm. Panel members, any other contributions to that?
I'll just pick up really quick because I was going to say joy. Find something that really taps into your creative flow. So whether you're a writer, a musician, find hobbies that just get you doing something outside of your day role that just makes you laugh, makes you smile. Those are some one just added that I would add.
Mhm. How do we think about dealing with burnout or feeling stuck or uncertain about the next career move? What advice would you give a professional who feels burned out? Dr. Watson, I'll ask you to take this one to start us off.
Yeah, I think so much of what has already been mentioned is really the go-to here, which is talking with others who've experienced some of this, who may be a bit more seasoned, who can help walk you through that. I think is really helpful. And then give yourself permission to take these breaks, to say no. I think is also critically important as well.
Mhm.
I'll add remembering that what you're experiencing is very human, and you're not alone in that, in the burnout, in the feeling stuck or feeling uncertain. So it's okay to feel it. I remind myself, don't sit in it, don't stay in it though. So find good outlets to process and get good wisdom and advice and insight. Remembering you don't have to have it all figured out. There's nothing that says by tomorrow or next week I have to have the plan in place or activated. But I also think getting, again, some mentorship and guidance to find the encouragement and the motivation to figure out what that next step is or how to find some balance in the season of burnout, but also know that it's a season. And so looking for the next opportunity to feel more restored and more balance is important. But just know that what you're experiencing is human and you're not by yourself in that. But make sure you're not experiencing that alone. So community is critical. Finding people, whether it's family, friends, trusted folks in the field, trusted colleagues, to be able to process and give you some encouragement is critical.
And I
Absolutely.
Dr.
would
Gillen?
also argue that the next step might also be outside of higher ed. I mean, that's the other piece too, is that oftentimes people think that I've got to move from one institution to the next. And sometimes it might be totally doing something outside of where you are currently situated. And I think that's okay too. And I think in an era, I think about my parents and how they worked, in the same job, in the same profession for 40 years, and it worked for them. But again, I think there's an opportunity in this moment to pivot and do other things outside of the traditional spaces that maybe we've even trained for. So I would just say there's advocacy organizations out there still connected to higher ed. There's civil rights groups. There's a ton of things that you can do, and we often train our students to not just be singularly focused on one thing, right? So I train my students, okay, you want to be a journalist, but the idea of being a print journalist is almost outdated now, right? Because people don't read newspapers in the way that they used to. So now you need to think about being a multimedia journalist. Maybe you need to learn how to do broadcast and print. Maybe you need to do some web stuff, social media. These are jobs that didn't exist, some of them 20 years ago. So how do you think and almost be futuristic and try to look around the corner and see where are things heading in the next 20 years, and how can I get some skills that maybe I'm leading that change in that direction?
Mhm. Dr. Gilliam?
My colleagues have hit it right on the head. I was going to say that we are in the age of, you're right, where our parents did stay places for 25 and 30 years. And I'm of the opinion, of course, there are emotional periods and there's ebbs and flows and there are times. But once you let go of the emotion, you have to ask yourself, are you ready to move on?
Mm.
Do you feel valued? Are you bored? Is it time to find something else? Are you ready to stretch? Are you ready for that stretch assignment? And I'm okay with, and I know I'm of the odds, I'm okay with people locking in and staying in someplace 3 years and then saying, hey, I'm ready for something new. I've done my
Mhm.
work. I've given my best. Of course, when you're working in that assignment, your thought isn't the next position. You're, of course, perfecting the position in which you're in, but it's also we have the responsibility to ourselves, not to anyone else, um, to go out and do what makes us great, what makes us impactful, and to enjoy being someplace that we have to be for 10 hours a day, or that we
Mhm.
want to be for 10 hours a day.
Thank you. There are a couple good books that have been tossed into the chat. I encourage you to click on them and give them a look at books that I have used in the past as well. There's another book that's not referenced here that I'd like to mention. NASPA recently published a book a year or two ago called The Next Act, Realigning Your Mindset, Purpose, and Career. And what it does is it takes this conversation we're having right now and helping student affairs professionals reimagine what to do next outside of student affairs. It goes into consulting, K through 12 school administration, moving to a different country. It helps you think about a whole variety of different opportunities. And Dr. Harmon is also one of the authors of that book. So please check out The Next Act. The authors are Amy Hack and Jason Pena, and they do a really good job of bringing together a number of authors to submit chapters on real critical ideas about the profession. So please check it out when you get a chance. Let me turn to my next question. Um, One of the things that we haven't examined is people have real constraints. We've talked about the ability to say, hey, I'm willing to move anywhere. But some folks have real constraints, elderly parents, children with special needs and healthcare needs that they need to stay close to an area or a particular hospital, church relationships that they refuse to give up as part of their own mental health. So when there are real constraints in an executive transition, what advice would you give individuals about navigating those real critical constraints and seeking other roles and opportunities when your circle that you are flexible in might be limited? I know that's a tough question.
Dr. Carey, would you just repeat that question?
I sure will. And I'll probably put it in the context of a story. So let's say I have a teenage daughter that is going through some personal challenges. Her parents recently separated, and both parents want to be available for her. However, one parent is working at an institution and facing a tremendous amount of discrimination and race-based activities that they are finding almost impossible to continually deal with. So they want to make an executive transition. They need to get out of this particular institution for their own health and well-being. However, they know that that would cause additional trauma to their teenage daughter, who they want to be there for and be supportive of. I'm just talking real life things that keep you in Gainesville, Florida, that keep you in Tallahassee, that keep you in Ann Arbor, Michigan, real life, family, churches, finances. However, the job that you're in is making you sick every day. What advice what can we share with our colleagues? This is a rubber hits the road type question. This is like real stuff. This is what people are really talking about. Everybody can't pick up and go live in Vancouver, Canada, or somewhere else in the world. Some people, their geographic region are 3 towns or 2 states. How do we help people navigate this? This is rebuilding and retooling your career. What advice do you have? Dr. Watson, you offered, hey, there are things outside of higher education you consider doing. You can work for your local newspaper. You can work for a local company. You can work for a there are a number of opportunities for you to expand your skill set outside of your institution. What else will we say to our folks about who have real restrictions that may keep them to a 100-mile radius of where they are right now?
Yeah, no, that's tough. I'm gonna pass that one to my colleagues here. I mean, again, outside of those things that I mentioned, is really challenges this individual, right? It's so it will range and differ from person to person. I'm seeing more and more individuals actually doing the commuting thing as well, which is again, depending on if it works for a family, it's totally possible, right? To live in one state a couple of days and have some degree of flexibility if an institution is willing to afford you that, so that you can at least maybe skip out on Thursday or work remotely on Thursday or Friday and then have the weekend. So I think those conversations should be explored at least in the negotiation phase as well, because I'm seeing more and more of that happening, particularly after COVID, and there being some flexibility on some of
Absolutely. Dr. Watson, thanks for saying that. I am a commuter. Um, I have a home base, but I'm very clear with my president, very clear that when I begin a position that I do not have the intentions right now of uprooting my children or my husband's practice. And so that's something that comes with me. And some people are like, oh, well, she can't be a provost or be a vice provost if she's in another state Thursday. But it's about negotiating power. And I'm
Mhm.
just not ready. I'm going to remain a commuter for a bit and see. But I think it's about being very transparent is probably the word that I'm here. Because everyone's like, oh, when are you moving here? Where are the children in school? And I'm like, right now I'm just working on achieving and doing well at the job that I have.
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the topics that I thought may have emerged from this question as well is you may consider while you are in your role building your own hustle, building your consultancy practice, publishing, speaking, going on tour, doing a podcast. We talked about listening to podcasts, but we haven't talked about producing your own. We haven't talked about publishing and then hitting the road and talking about your book. So by the time it's time for you to exit, you've got an active hustle going on that you can make sustainable over some years. It's hard to get started, but all the tools are available. The LinkedIn, the Instagrams, the publishing tools that are available. Consider building a consulting practice that will eventually you'll be able to step into full time. It doesn't happen overnight. It's sometimes a 3 to 5 year journey to get there to build your reputation and brand. But it's an option that helps you stay where you are and do something that you love, something that you built on your own. It's something that I think we should consider as we think about it. You have a business in you that will help you live a more fulfilling life. Let's take, I would like to wrap up with the panel providing kind of final thoughts and comments and, your ideas, your impression, your background, maybe even a personal story as we begin to wrap up the day. And I'll ask Martino and Brandy before we're all done if they have any closing comments about the foundation that they would like to mention as well. I'll ask Dr. Malo McCowan if you wouldn't mind beginning with some closing thoughts and comments, and then we'll go around.
Sure, it's been a pleasure. Thank everyone for being here. I'm use my closing remarks to uh, give a concrete action step. I subscribe to a marketing guru's blog, Seth Godin, and I'll drop the link into the chat. But one of his blog intro posts earlier this week was about how to um, do these atomic habits, these daily things, a daily diary, so that when you are ready for your next thing, you have a series of content
Mm.
to go back and look to. So there are 5 things, and I'll leave it with you. I'll drop them into the chat, so don't worry about writing them down, but just take it in. The first is to reflect on every day a generous act of leadership. How have you in your role led and helped other people step into something that you wanted them to get into? What's a thank you note that you sent someone? So expressing gratitude. A time in your day where you explored being curious or you asked a very difficult or challenging question of someone. The fourth is a new skill learned, right? Like I take advantage of some of the free LinkedIn learning, Coursera. And then a final thing is an interaction that increased your empathy. So those 5 things, if you do them over your course of a year, you have 365 journal entries that you could go to. So when you're asked during an interview, can you tell me a time where you've stretched your leadership skills? Can you tell me a time where you leaned into empathy to yield a result? Can you tell me a time when you've been how where curiosity has shaped your ability to lead teams to their peak performance? All of those things you have concrete examples to go to. So that will be my closing remarks, and just to put a plug in for a daily practice that I'm leaning into. I'm not perfect at it. I don't do it every day, but I've got a series of entries that I can go to.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins?
Sure. First, also want to thank everyone for the engagement and being here with us. I've really enjoyed this and being able to learn with my colleagues and with everyone around the virtual table. So I appreciate everyone being here. 3 things for me to wrap up. In the spirit of Mother's Day, I wanted to lift up a quote my mother would always tell me, and while she's not physically with me anymore, her lessons and her wisdom is still with me. She was the wisest person I've ever met, but she would always tell me count up the cost.
Mm.
When you make these decisions, whether it's to leave an institution, stay someplace, and not just financial costs, count up all the costs, count up the cost for your well-being, count up the cost for your spiritual needs and personal professional needs, like count up the costs. I just want to leave that with everyone as you make decisions, as you think about what retooling looks like or feels like. Make sure that you take a personal account and count the cost. So that's one thing. The other thing is, as you retool, trust that you're making the best decision with the information that you have. This is guidance I got from a mentor, and you can always pivot and make another decision. So don't feel locked in. Don't feel discouraged by whatever situation you're dealing with. You made the best decision with the information that you had, and you can make another decision. Thank you, Dr. Carey, for that. And last thing is just get you a wisdom circle or a board of advisors, whether that have that be mentors, coaches, role models, sponsors, folks who are in your industry, in your field, and folks who are outside of your field. I really appreciate those who aren't in higher ed, who are part of my board of managers and wisdom circle, because they force me to articulate what I'm feeling or what I am thinking through in a different way, which offers more clarity. So for me, that's really helpful in the retooling and making sure that I'm a nimble professional.
Thank you. Dr. Watson?
Yes, thank you again for the invitation to be a part of this. I too have learned so much, so I want to thank my colleagues for sharing so much. I really just have two things wanting to add. One is this idea that we have the capacity to be more than simply what our title assigns to us, right? And so again, just because we are, a student affairs professional or a professor or whatever, we have the capacity to do more and to venture out into different spaces. So I think it's really important that we not allow others to box us in, right? And to say, this is who you are and this is what you do, because we often have the capacity to do more. So that's the first thing. And then the other is a challenge for us, is that is when we get into these positions of influence and leadership and power, that we're actually reaching back and helping to pull others up. And one of the things that drives me crazy is when I hear people say, well, I've been the only one for 30 or 40 years. And so I blame the institution, but I also blame you because what have you done in 40 years to help other people? And it's almost like this badge of pride, like I've been the only one. And sometimes, this idea of being the gatekeeper, keeping others out, and walking around flaunting, that you've been the only one doesn't really help others who are desperately skilled, desperately ready to make the move, and you could be the person to actually help them. So I would just really challenge us to really move beyond just the talk to the walk and actually let's try to help others, this next generation of people coming behind.
Dr. Gilliam.
Thank you. And it's been an absolute pleasure serving this. I always like being around like-minded people. One thing that I would say is be intentional. Be intentional about what you ask for in the space, what you speak out loud. I'm very intentional about what I want and how I say it. And I understand that words have life and power. So that means who I surround myself with and to be intentional about them speaking life into me and us speaking life into each other. Um, that is that's a non-negotiable for me. Uh, you call me and say, "Hey, did you hear?" I'm like, "No, I didn't hear that, but did you hear?" Like, that Nordstrom has a sale on all red. Like, I don't know, but I'm just redirecting the conversation just because that weighs on you. Um, and also, one thing that I'm having to teach myself and learn for myself after 15 years plus years is when you make a decision, ride with it. Know that you made the decision, you were at peace with it. I know that I prayed at that point, my husband and I, and it is what it is. You don't have to be stuck in it either, though. You can pivot. And if people have, oh, she did this, he went there, she did, that's on them. The opinions of others will fall off as long as you're good and good with yourself. That's all that matters. And my other thing, I wish that he was on this call, Dr. Timon Graham, who's also on the MCT board. We bounce idea. He is the VP of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at Florida Memorial. We bounce ideas off of each other. But he's not just that friend that's, oh, you're right, Gillian, you're right. He's like, nah, girl, you wrong today. I think you need to think about it this way. And so having those honest, professional relationships, but also with friends who are willing to tell you, like, Aaron, how much grace have you given your AVP? How much grace have you given your dean? Let's think about another way that we can do this. Everything doesn't have to be, I'm very policy, but there is a way to also look at what someone else has to say. And that's surrounding yourself with people who are bold enough to speak up to you, but also intentional about the things they say to you.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel for their closing comments, and I'll add a few as well. The first one was discussed today that I'd like to add is about your scholarship. Build your scholarship. We're practitioners, we're in an academy, and the academy appreciates nothing more than scholar practitioners, a dual threat. A person that can do it in the administrative office, but then at the end of the day, you can go teach a class. And you're published, you have articles, you're presenting at conferences, but build your scholarship so that you can protect yourself either way. So wherever the wind blows, you have the ability to step into the next role. And I've seen it happen time and time again. People become provosts, Suddenly they end their term and they go right back into the classroom and they continue with their provost compensation at different institutions. So I want to encourage us to be scholar practitioners. Write, 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 write. Submit, 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 submit. Get rejected, then get accepted, accepted, accepted. So do what it takes to be a scholar in your discipline. Read, listen, but participate in the academy. I'd also like to encourage us to think about our executive voices. Go back and read your resume and see how many times you sound like a program coordinator and move that to an executive voice. Talk about impact to the university. Talk about impact to student success. Talk about impact to the local environment, whether it be political or housing or food insecurity. Everything that you have in your resume, there's an executive version of that you need to find. And last but not least, don't hesitate to email me or any of the panel members. If you have a question, you want to follow up on something, you want to dive deeper into something, you're interested in having your resume reviewed, I would be glad to do that. And I believe my email has been in the chat, and the email of the committee members will be available as well. I once saw a great quote on LinkedIn that said, "Your GPS doesn't say I've made a mistake. Your GPS says recalculating." So any decision that you make is really not a mistake. It's feedback, and you're recalculating. And that's what we're doing right now. You're getting ready to recalculate your career. And I hope the information we provided today will help you do that. Martino, I turn it back to you. Unmute, Martino.
That sounded great. I'll do it over again. I am so filled with joy and so excited that this webinar I thought went very well. I do want to mention a couple things. Dr. Carey motivated me to write. I've been in the profession probably 25 years and hadn't written a thing other than a memo. And since that time, since he motivated me, I've contributed or written 3 chapters in 3 different publications. I really encourage you to read The Next Act. It is sort of the soundtrack to this webinar. And that was so much fun to write. So I encourage you to do that. I put in the chat, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, I serve as the chair of the Melvin C. Terrell Educational Foundation, in addition to my role here at the University of Michigan. But I put information in the chat. If you want to learn more about our foundation, if you want to learn what we do, how you can support, not just financially, but just by sharing, spreading information. Financial is good too, but also we have a scholarship, so learning about our scholarship program. So I encourage you to visit our website and learn how you can be involved in some way. We need all of the support that we can get. And I want to share my deep appreciation for all of the members of the panel, for Dr. Carey for serving as a moderator, for all of you for taking time out of your day to be a part of this. And last but certainly not least, to Brandy Jones, who really was the person that put all this together. So let's all give Brandy a round of applause, and I'll pass it to her for any final comments that she might like to make.
I would just echo what Dr. Martino shared, which is thank you to everyone who was participating. Thank you for all those who joined. Also, thank you for Dr. Carey for carrying this conversation, as well as the panelists. We have recorded this even, and we'll be sharing it on our website in the coming days. So please be on the lookout. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our email is on our website. And yeah, thank you so much again for everyone joining. And I'm excited for our next event.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good day,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.